Welcome to the final study section on this course for cybersecurity. We're going to be getting into all areas of cybersecurity that you need to know for the Tech Plus exam. Here are the topics that we're going to cover in terms of cybersecurity. We're going to talk about common cybersecurity concepts. Then we're going to be talking about how we can actually secure our devices, our laptops, our smartphones, our computers. And we're going to be talking about password best practices to ensure that we and other people in our company know exactly how we should set our passwords and use them. We're also going to be talking about encryption basics, or essentially keeping data, information, and files safe. From there, we'll finish off with wireless network security and a few different features and areas of network security in general. Let's first dive into cybersecurity and cybersecurity concepts and frameworks before we go into some of those other topics. First, here, cybersecurity focuses on us protecting information from any threats or risks by ensuring that our data remains private, accurate, and available when needed. It also encompasses certain areas like making sure that people can't brute force their way in through networks and that devices are properly patched. Cybersecurity is an incredibly broad field, so we're going to try and condense it into an easy, digestible format. That way you can pass your Tech Plus exam. So let's go into security principles and user protection concepts that are commonly used in cybersecurity. First, we have the CIA triad, which we're going to be covering in this video. We have the CIANA pentagon. We have what's known as threats, risks, and vulnerabilities. These are very, very common in many areas of corporate. Even in project management, we use threats, risks, and not as much vulnerabilities, but we use threats and risks. Also, we have AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting for specific security measures. We also have what's known as non-repudiation, which means that we gather info on certain types of events to make sure that the person who is doing those events is held accountable in the event anything ever comes up. We'll also be talking about privacy and PII, or personally identifiable information, and there we'll be going into data ethics, as well as cookie consent and browser tracking. And finally, we'll go into account types like standard, admin, and guest. Let's first talk about the CIA triad. The CIA triad is made up of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It's a security model used to protect information systems and information technology in general. It represents three main principles of cybersecurity. Now, one thing to note, this is not the CIA or Central Intelligence Agency in the United States. This is more of a cybersecurity concept. So let's first start off here with confidentiality. This is just keeping information private and ensuring that only the people who need to see it are the ones seeing it. Next up is integrity, and this helps keep our information accurate and unchanged and lets us have that peace of mind that the information wasn't altered in any way that we weren't expecting. Finally, we have availability, which is making sure that our systems, our data, and our devices are accessible whenever needed. Here's a physical example of a CIA triad. You can see here on this triangle, we have confidentiality here, availability here, and integrity here, and these help to make up our security. Next up is the CIANA pentagon. So this kind of builds off of CIA. So here this stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability, which makes up the general CIA. And then we have two new terms for the CIANA pentagon, which is non-repudiation and authentication. This helps expand the CIA triad by adding two security principles. It helps organizations better protect data, users, and systems, and it's kind of like an updated CIA. Here we have confidentiality, integrity, availability, non-repudiation, and authentication making up our CIANA pentagon. Now we're going to dive into threats, risks, and vulnerabilities. In cybersecurity, our threats, our risks, and our vulnerabilities are anything that explains how security issues can occur. So threats, risks, and vulnerabilities, they're all different terms, but they are all very similar and they all apply to cybersecurity. So in cybersecurity, a threat is anything that can cause harm to a system or data. It could be intentional, accidental, and some common examples are hackers, malware, and natural disasters. One thing to understand with threats are anything negative. So just think about threats as just being anything negative. Risks, on the other hand, are a chance that a threat will take advantage of a vulnerability. So we might have a threat and the threat might not have been realized quite yet. So we can have threats that are sort of hibernating. They haven't really done much yet. They're just threats. They're either unrealized or they're realized. Unrealized means nothing's been done. Realized means something has been done. In this case, risks depend on how likely the threat is and how much damage it could cause. But additionally, risks can be realized or unrealized. And risks are generally not necessarily saying something has occurred, but that there's a risk of something occurring or potentially occurring. Lastly, we have vulnerabilities, and this is just a weakness in a system, device, or a process. It can be exploited by a threat, and some examples are outdated software and weak passwords. From here, we have AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting. These are a security framework that we can use in order to control who has access to a system, devices, or whatever they're using, and also to track what the person is actually doing. So functions of AA is authentication. Authentication confirms our identity. It's usually done with a username or password, and sometimes it includes something like an MFA step or two-factor MFA or two-factor FA, which is essentially like a code being sent to a phone or a pop-up coming up on your phone where you have to press confirm. There's a bunch of different multi-factor authentications ways nowadays. So that's essentially what authentication is it's just verifying that we are who we say we are. Authorization is what decides where we can actually access certain things, what files we can access, what time of the day or night we can access them, things like that. It mainly controls files, folders, and various systems, and users should only get access to exactly what they need for their role. Finally, we have accounting, and this is keeping records and logs of users' activities and anyone who signs in. It helps track logins, changes, and system use. It can also help with different types of security checks and investigations. Here is a model of AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting. Here we have non-repudiation, and this provides proof that someone did something. It's specific to the person who actually did the action, but non-repudiation is having the evidence to show that someone actually took some sort of action. Maybe they deleted a file, maybe they logged into an application they shouldn't have. That's what non-repudiation is able to do. It's able to make sure that we can verify someone's actually done something, and then we have proof of that. So it's important because it prevents people from denying actions they performed. It helps with security investigations. It provides proof for legal or business purposes, and it supports accountability as well as trust. Here we have privacy and PII, or personally identifiable information. Privacy refers to a person's right to control how their personal information is collected, used, and shared. PII, or personally identifiable information, is any information that can actually be used to identify an individual. This data must be protected to prevent identity theft, fraud, misuse, and just from bad actors getting a hold of it. In fact, many organizations have legal, regulatory, or ethical or compliance requirements or duties or legalities to protect people's personally identifiable information and other information. This is especially true in healthcare settings in the United States, where doctors, nurses, any medical staff have to keep patients' records extremely private. That would be what's known as PHI, or personal health information. Some examples of personally identifiable information include full name, social security number, email address, phone number, home address, driver's license number, et cetera, et cetera. Here's an example of personally identifiable information versus public data. So here you could see weather forecasts. Anyone can go out and look at the weather, but they can't go out and just find your full name and that you're a customer at a certain organization. That's personally identifiable information. Same thing with public data, a public social media post, anyone can see it. But your address, not everyone should know your address, right? Same thing with public data. Anything published in new articles, it's probably public data. Personally identifiable information would be something like an ID number or a driver's license number or even a picture of a driver's license. So you can see here, public data, very easy to find, very simple, not that important. Personally identifiable information gives away certain clues to who someone is or what pieces of information that they have or where they live or something about them that could be potentially misused. Here we have data ethics, and this is all about using data responsibly and ensuring privacy and using data honestly. Some examples of data ethics include a company collecting customer email addresses to send order updates. Now, that company has that person's email, but the company should only use the email for order-related messages. They shouldn't be going out online on a data brokerage and selling their customers' information. They shouldn't be sharing them with other companies. They shouldn't be blowing up their email address with advertisements and things like that. So there's definitely some ethical considerations. And in terms of unethical use, that would be, again, something like selling email addresses to big data firms, advertisers, or anyone else without the customer's knowledge or consent. Many times it's hard because they will stuff these little clauses into user agreements. So when you sign up for a website and you click, I agree, I agree, I agree, a lot of the times you're agreeing to not necessarily illegal data use, but definitely very, very sketchy and borderline unethical data use. Here we have cookie consent and browser tracking, and who doesn't love cookies? These are both used for websites to be able to collect and store user data using cookies that are populated in that person's web browser. Many modern privacy laws do require websites to ask for permission before tracking users in order to protect their privacy and PII. So here's what cookies are and why cookie consent is important. Cookies are those small files stored on your web browser by websites. They remember a bunch of different information about you, and it's important that you consent to them or that you're able to not consent to them so you can protect your own privacy, and you have control over what data is collected in ensuring that your data isn't being misused and that companies are not following privacy law. Here we have the various account types, and there's dozens or hundreds of different account types out there depending on what application you're using. These three are just by far the most common. So let's talk about standard accounts first. These are used for everyday tasks. They can use apps and files, but they can't mess around with major system settings. Usually regular users and employees in a company have a standard account. Next is an administrator account, and this has management over certain systems. Maybe not them all, but definitely some sort of IT related system. The level of access depends on settings, software, and user accounts, but usually for the most part, they get full access or very, very elevated and high access. Common use of administrator accounts is IT staff or system owners. Finally, we have guest accounts here, and these are temporary or limited access, usually given to people like auditors, people coming in for a certain amount of time, and usually they're very restricted and they don't have any option for system changes. Again, very often used with visitors or public use, not as often used in a small business or an individual setting, mainly in bigger corporations and bigger businesses. They'll create guest accounts for people who are coming in. So in this video, we covered a lot of different concepts as far as security goes and frameworks. In this video, we talked about the CIA triad, the CIA pentagon, threats, risks, and vulnerabilities. We talked about AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting. We went over non-repudiation, privacy, and PII, or personally identifiable information, data ethics, cookie consent, and browser tracking, as well as common account types. In the next video, we're going to be going over how we can secure our devices.